Hello, people, and welcome back to MMA from London to LA. My name is Callum. I'm joined by the one, the only, the MMA professor, Colin Crandall. How you doing, bro?
Doing very well, bro. How about yourself?
I'm good, man. I feel like we ain't done this in ages. We haven't
I
done this
know.
in ages. It's
It
nice
really,
seeing your face, hearing your voice. Happy to be back, man. Happy to be back.
absolutely, and the same for you. Always great to see you. I always, wish I was over there in England. We could go out and get some fish and chips one day.
Indeed.
I hope, because here
One
is
day, I really hope. I really
it,
do hope. I
it would be
really do
great.
hope.
And the United
Indeed.
States, I was going to say the United States maybe should realize we should start having some fish and chips. At least not
Yeah.
every. It has to be more than you have to travel here. 15 kilometers to go find a fish and chips
Not
shop.
good enough.
Not good.
Not good
Not good
enough.
at all.
Not good enough at all.
Nope. Nope.
But we are back, Colin, on the back of a UFC fight night and on the eve of UFC 296, the last main event or the last pay-per-view card to close out the year. Obviously, one more. Sorry, no, yesterday was the last fight night as well. This is the last pay-per-view, last card of 2023. So we've had a fantastic 2023. Hopefully we can end with a bang. And I'll be honest, the UFC put on great cards a lot of the time, but the UFC 296 card is threatening to be the premier card of 2023. But before we get into that, let's have a look back at the previous fight night, which again had some great stoppages. A couple of names who might be looking to climb up the rankings and start to make some real noise. What did you think about the overall card?
I thought it was quite good. I thought that there weren't a lot of big names on there, which took away a little bit of the appeal for a lot of the somewhat more casual fans. But I think it was a solid card. And on a fight night, everyone fights hard. You know what I wonder? I wonder if on the fight night cards they go to the fighters and have someone say, "Hey guys, look, this is not a pay-per-view, but if you perform well here, your next appearance could be on a pay-per-view," because A, it would make sense, and B, I've heard they used to do that at least to kind of put a little bit of extra motivation. And that's why sometimes the fight night cards turn out so well, because I think the men and women that are fighting really know that this is a chance, for people to see it on free or nearly free TV. Here you've got to pay that $10 per month for the streaming if you have it. But yeah, absolutely. So I'll jump in. I'll take the lead on this if you don't mind. And
Yeah, go for it.
all right, here we go. Not much to say, not much time to have seen the Toledo Allen Carr. Rihanna Amanda didn't see that. Carlos Hernandez gave it a good shot, but Tatsuro Taira looks to be legit for real. Stephanie Egger, feel bad for her. Her opponent missed weight fairly substantially, coming in 4 pounds over the limit at 139. So she misses weight, and then she also gets a somewhat undeserved decision. So I feel bad for Stephanie Egger, right? Because she takes the fight against a heavier opponent and then beats her by most people's account and doesn't get the decision. That sucks. You get Melquizael Costa, very tough guy, gave it a good shot, but was overwhelmed by Steve Garcia, who was actually the underdog. Very few underdogs came in this card. I think only one or two. Shannon Ross Young Song Park didn't really see. Kevin Jusei versus Kenan Song. Jusei looking very good. And then Andre Muniz and the Iron Turtle, Jun Young Park, split decision. Very, very good fight. Both guys are promising contenders. They may see each other again down the line. Tim Elliott, my man, the gritty American wrestler.
Wizard on the ground.
36 years old, and he's fighting the lower weight classes. People who are not extremely longtime fans of MMA may not understand the difference, because they see, well, I'm seeing men that are 36 years old fight in several UFC fights. Yes, indeed. However, they are in the higher weight classes.
Yeah.
Not in the two lowest weight classes. It's more unusual because it's all about reflexes and speed.
Yeah.
And your career longevity is greater heavier weight if you're going to be an older fighter. But Tim Elliott just transcends that. So he normally fights 125 pounds. He took this short notice fight at 135 and won by submission. You know what's interesting? He's a grindy wrestler, really grindy, tough guy, gritty. He's been in the game for a while. And he won by the neck and arm choke or arm triangle choke from the top, which is kind of a staple of
Yeah.
wrestlers' arsenals. But then he mentioned in the interview after, I think it was the backstage interview, that he doesn't. That's not one of his go-to submissions.
Usually
Which,
the guillotine's one of his go-to.
right, that's true. But still, you would think that it's a bit odd because that is traditionally one of a wrestler's go-to submissions.
Yeah.
Apparently not his, but he did it quite well. And then Nazareth Hackprask pulling off the good win over Jamie Malarkey. Tough guy Malarkey from Australia, the Irish
Yeah.
from Australia. There's a bunch of Irish in Australia. Hello to my mates in Australia and my Irish.
Indeed.
And then Anthony Lionheart Smith, Khalil Roundtree was looking good. Roundtree is so tough. He really is coming to his own, and
He's so violent. He's almost like the most violent but nicest guy at the same time. It's really
yes,
weird.
yes,
There's
I
no
like him.
there's no like trash talk. Even when he's in the cage, he's very subdued. Out of the cage, he's subdued. Always, from whenever I've seen interactions of his, always polite, respectful. He just turns into an animal in that cage. But what I will say, sorry to cut you, is
No, not at all. You're fine.
you just saw him as a person when Anthony got hurt, because he fell to the ground after the combination. He could have ran and followed up, but he almost held his hand there to say, "Ref, don't let me do this, please."
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
he's had enough. Step in. Many other fighters would have jumped on, and they wouldn't have been wrong to.
Right.
But what I like to say as well, shout out to Mark Smith, the referee, because you see the difference between the stoppage in that fight and the Bobby Green stoppage last week. It's night and day.
Yeah.
And you know, we're quick to criticize referees for, you know, bad decisions in the octagon. When they make good decisions, we also have to give it the same energy. So shout out to Mark Smith.
Absolutely. I've always liked Khalil. Something about Khalil and his like clean shaven, except for that mustache. This mustache to me looks like from the 1800s. He looks like one of these old barber shop photographs, a black version of these old barber shop guys from the 1800s. He's quite unique. I've always he caught my eye from the beginning, and when he fought, I said that looks like a guy back in those old pictures of these old men in the 1800s with a barber shop type of mustache from that time. And he's a unique dude, and apparently he's battled with depression and doubt and mental emotional issues, and it makes me happy to see someone that has had those battles essentially really work them out. And it just shows emotional issues are quite difficult, and I'm glad they're coming to light in that. I think for many, many decades, you know, they were telling men, you know, don't complain. And I'm not saying, you know, also because, you know, where I stand, I do believe that traditional roles are important. And I think men do need to be men. But I also do think that it is a good thing that it's not considered a taboo for a man to say, hey, I'm doing the best I can. I'm supporting my family. I'm taking care of things, but I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling out of sorts. I'm feeling not certain if I'm a good person or if I can, you know, continue on. And it's nice to have the reality of that from a tough guy, a professional fighter, saying that, you know, I've had bouts of that as well. And so that there's not such a stigma. And I think that's important. Yeah.
Completely agree.
Yep, and then Anthony Smith definitely will be back. I think, although a lot of people are saying at some point he's going to say, "Hey, that's enough of this. I'm gonna, I'm gonna be a commentator," because he's a quite good commentator, unique personality. Yeah, and then Song Yudong, Chris Gutierrez is a good fight by Gutierrez. Yudong is such a physical specimen. Yudong looked almost like he had a 1 stone advantage in weight if you look kind of at their bodies there, right? He looked a lot bigger. He's
a lot thicker, isn't he?
Yeah, he was a slightly shorter, but a lot thicker, and I think that that Gutierrez did fight a smart fight, because I think anyone else could have got wiped out, and I think we've lost Callum, so I'll continue really quick, and then Callum will be back momentarily, I'm sure, and so Gutierrez gave it a really good shot, and he was getting a great strategy from Coach Mark Montoya, and there Callum is back, excellent, and I kept it going without missing a beat,
appreciate
and not a problem, no problem, mate. And he say, Song Yudong, tough guy, great team alpha male, and had some call outs there. His English was very good. And, overall good card. So now if you can take it away, continuing to the big final event of the year for the UFC.
So I'm gonna try and not be too biased because obviously the person in the main event is a person I'm a big fan of. But we'll start with the fight that's opening the main card, and that is Tony Ferguson against Paddy the Baddy Pimblett. So Tony Ferguson's last fight was against Bobby Green, and he was subbed in that fight. Something we hadn't seen. I mean, we'd seen him knocked out, we'd seen him stopped via strikes, etc., but hadn't seen him choked out. And we know what Ferguson's like. We saw him against Charles Oliveira when his arm was hyperextended, wouldn't tap. Saw him against Beneil Dariush when his knee was being torn to shreds, wouldn't tap. It was always going to be him getting put to sleep. He was never going to tap, and thankfully nothing's been broken. But then on the flip side, you have Paddy the Baddy, who before his last fight was almost becoming one of the most fan-friendly fighters, and people were really loving Paddy. And then he has that week lead up to the fight where he sort of trashes Ariel Helwani and then goes at Ilia Topuria in the press conference. Then he has the fight with Jared Gordon, who many people think he should have lost. He gets the victory. Then this post-fight interview wasn't great. Then he gets he suffered an injury, has long-term injury, and then has the surgery and everything, but he's back now. Who is this fight more important for, in your opinion? Is it Paddy or is it for Ferguson?
That is a very, very good question. Very, very good question, bro. I appreciate that. And in all honesty, it's so important to both men for different reasons, of course. In Ferguson, you have the veteran who's got to be nearly 40, yes, 39 years old.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the other man, his opponent, I think is going to be 10 years his junior. Let's take a look. 11 years his junior.
Yeah.
The Baddy is on a 6-fight win streak with 4 of them in the UFC, 3 by submission, and then of course that decision against Jared Gordon just over 1 year ago. I mean, if Paddy loses here, this derails him tremendously because it will be losing to an opponent who's lost 6 fights in a row, albeit a legend, but still a legend who's lost 6 fights in a row. And for Ferguson, if he loses, then it possibly might be the loss that pushes him out of the UFC. I think it perhaps may be a record in the UFC to have had 6 losses in a row and have a fight signed for your 7th fight. I don't know that I've ever seen that before.
Maybe BJ Penn, maybe? Did BJ Penn?
Maybe. It's possible. It's possible. But it's something perhaps like that. And they're legends, and BJ was a great champion. But I think that so I think that a win here by Ferguson, in my opinion, would probably be followed by another loss. If somehow he manages to beat Paddy, then unless they deliberately look for someone else that he's got a chance again, then it would be another loss. And so to me, it will be just delaying the inevitable. But it would assure Tony probably of another fight for Paddy. So I would say more important for Paddy. A loss here would really be not a good thing. Not only that, but I do believe Paddy is a substantial favorite. Let me see in the American.
I think
here.
he is.
Yeah, let's take a look. And what have I done here? Why does that come over to the side? Sometimes I have no idea what I'm doing here with the internet. But Generation X, we're not expected that much to know what we're doing with the internet, even though it's been around for nearly 30 years. Let me see here. Okay, so if I press that, there we go. That's what I've done wrong. Excellent. All right. As I used to say to my late wife, I'm not as dumb as I look. And then she'd look at me and she'd say, I don't know. It's kind of a question on that. But let me see. The odds on that, American odds, are going to be about 3-1, 3-1 in favor of the Brit Paddy Pimblett. So my thoughts. So and I think Paddy wins this fight, but it's going to be interesting to see because Tony certainly will be the most experienced, most crafty fighter Paddy's ever fought. And not that it makes much sense or is relevant, if we look at Tony Ferguson in the incarnations of his career, this would certainly be by far the best fighter that Paddy has ever fought, but really only in name, though, perhaps not in actuality. But the best fighter that at some point in his opponent's career, but not now. So I don't know if that means much. But yeah, I think Paddy is going to be. I have no idea how this fight's going to go though. But what's your thought?
So I hear everything you say, but I actually think the fight's more important for Ferguson. I think a loss here, it slightly derails Paddy, but again, no disrespect to him, I don't think he'll become a champion. So I don't think it derails him to the point where you're like, well, we thought he was going to be the guy to be a champion, but he's not now. I don't think Paddy will become a champion. I think he'll always be a fan-friendly fighter, but I don't think he'll ever cross that threshold of being a champion. If I'm wrong, I hold my hands up and I wish him all the luck in the world. I genuinely do. But the reason I think it's more important for Ferguson is because I don't think there is a bounce back from this. I think this is, if he loses this one and he loses it emphatically, I think even Dana and the UFC, as much as they love Ferguson and would want him to go out on his own accord, they would kind of turn around and be like, yeah, enough's enough. We can't keep putting him in there and watching him get hurt. And I think they'd step in. So I think, and the fact that he's hired David Goggins as well to do a lot of his camp with him, I think this is do or die for Tony. However, saying that, even though I think it's more important to him, I don't think he wins. I just think, and it's weird, I watched the highlights of him versus Anthony Pettis at UFC 229 that was on the undercard of McGregor Khabib, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
He was a juggernaut that night. And you just that version of Tony Ferguson, I looked at it and I thought, there's no one on the planet's beating him at 55. I didn't even think Khabib would beat him.
I thought that was going to be a great even fight, indeed.
Yeah, and then obviously he loses the fight to Gaethje. And even the Gaethje fight, I'm like, did that happen because he decided to cut weight twice in the space of 11 days? And I'm like, you can't do that against someone like Gaethje because you're dehydrating the brain and Gaethje hits like a truck. But the other losses, again, he lost to Gaethje, that's aged really well. Lost to Oliveira, that's aged really well. Dariush, he lost to, aged really well. Chandler, we know, caught him, but he could have finished Chandler in the first round as well. Bobby Green, that wasn't a great performance. And I think a better version of Ferguson would have beaten Bobby Green and Michael Chandler. For me, even though you're right in saying this is Paddy's hardest fight, this is effectively Tony's easiest fight for years on paper as well. So I think if Tony can't get the job done here, I think, which I don't unfortunately think he will, then I think it's time to hang up the gloves for his own safety as well.
Excellent analysis. You convinced me. I hadn't thought of it in that that way, in that regard. You know, I wonder if Paddy were to not win, then the organizer would probably say no scran for you.
Yeah.
You know, right? And we'll also miss the fact that I love when he was eating pizza in England. And even though he's wolfing it down, he says this is proper snide. He didn't like the pizza.
You know, I also hope Paddy turns his fortunes around, and because when he came, he was really refreshing when he came into the scene. And again, I'm a Liverpool fan, and so is Paddy Pimblett, so I instantly had that connection with him as well. But it has been quite difficult to support him of late. And I hope he can turn that around and get back to his roots of who he is as a person and not get into silly spats with journalists and media personalities. And I look, I actually don't think Ariel Helwani was wrong in how he dealt with that situation. I think that was more on Paddy's side. But I don't think Paddy needs to be getting involved in that sort of stuff. For me, that sort of stuff should stay private.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Agreed.
Moving on to another controversial person. Who's in the next fight against a former teammate, Vicente Luque versus Ian Machado Gary. Now, Ian Gary's been dubbed the next Conor McGregor, both Irish, both loud, brash, and backing up their performances with excellent fights in the cage. However, he's come under a lot of scrutiny and he's been kicked out of gyms. Obviously, he's fighting on the same card as Leon Edwards, kicked out of Leon Edwards' gym recently. Also used to be a training part of Vicente Luque. This is a big fight for him. Vicente Luque is extremely experienced, great ground game. He's got knockout power as well. But Ian Gary, I'll be honest, as much as people don't necessarily like him, he's showing he could potentially be the real deal in the 170 pound division. He's big for the weight. He's tall. He's rangy. Who do you think takes this one?
Well, first I would say, to use the pronunciation in England, he is now the king of controversy.
Yeah, yeah,
In MMA
he
controversy.
literally
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah, yep, absolutely. And can you imagine if people were scrutinizing your relationship with your spouse as much as this? It'd be a bloody disaster. I think I would hate that. I mean,
Same.
just awful. Um, so onto the fighting aspect of it. Yeah, he's a very, very good fighter. Let's take a quick look and see who his opponents have been here, because I've my lot on my mind since I lost my wife 3 months ago, and quite tough to remember everything. So he in the UFC, he is on a
I
one,
think
two,
it's
three, six
is it
fight win streak.
6 already?
Yep,
Goodness.
yep, yep. And the decisions were 3 and the stoppages were 3. He beat someone named Jordan Williams, who I think I'm somewhat familiar with. Someone named Darian Weeks, who I've heard of. Gabriel Green, who I've heard of. Song Kanan, although Kanan I think has lost several fights here. He just
Kanan
lost
rocked him
yesterday.
in that fight as well.
He did, yeah. And Kanan is only a 500 fighter in the UFC. And then Ian beat D-Rod, Daniel Rodriguez, in the
Yeah,
first, and then did look very good against Neil Magny, who is a very good fighter, but a bit on the
yeah,
far end of his career. Um, this is a big step up, and Callum has escaped here by accident, so I'll continue. This is a big step up in class. This is a quite beautiful house here. I wish I lived here. Against Vicente Luque. Callum is back. We got that going perfect. And step up in class here for Ian Gary. Vicente Luque is a great fighter. I've interviewed him. Very nice guy. He's 22-9, but in his last dozen fights, he's only had 3 losses. He lost to Stephen Tom. No, he's not as that old a fighter, 32 years old, but he's been in the UFC for
a long
my,
time.
a long time. Let me take a look. He's been in the UFC for nearly 9 years, and he lost to Leon, which aged very well. He lost to Wonder Boy, which also aged well, and then he had a great streak going until he lost, pretty much just being out wrestled by Bilal Muhammad. Then he had that amazing brawl, one of the best striking matches in the UFC in years, against Jeff Neal, and that's
Yeah,
where he had a
great
little
fun.
bit of swelling up in his brain. He had a little bit of
Yeah,
almost some sort of a brain aneurysm. Came back against former champ Rafael dos Anjos in August. He is 5'11" and 32 years old. Ian Gary, the Irishman, is 6'3" and 26 years old. Yeah,
very
so
tall for the division.
absolutely, indeed. So the toughest fighter for sure that Gary has fought, and although Magny is up there and D-Rod's a tough guy, but not the toughest fighter I think that Luque has fought.
No, definitely not.
No, I think that this fight should be nearly even on the odds. And let's take a look. It's funny how I said even in the odds, and then this absolutely ridiculous thing has appeared on the screen, stopping me. There we go, from being able to see what I wanted to see. Let's see here. Oh no, it is not. It indeed is not. Look at this. They have the Irishman 3-1 favorite. That to me is a bit ludicrous. Though, here's the thing.
3-1 is high.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be much closer than that. You know what I think that the odds makers may be thinking is that the A side here is Gary.
Yeah, because he's
Judges,
more popular.
yes, judges seem to have an amazing knack, and I'm just going to leave it at that. But people understand kind of what I'm wondering. Amazing knack of, and in the example we gave with Patty and Jared Gordon, of giving a decision to a fighter who's substantially more popular. And I don't like
We
that.
see
I
a
don't
bit
like
too
that at
often,
all.
don't we?
Yeah, just a bit too often for my comfort. And so I think they feel like if this goes the distance, the judges will give it to Gary, which probably is true, although I really hate that. I despise that. But I do think that hopefully that wouldn't happen, and I think that Luque is live in this fight. I certainly wouldn't lay nearly 4-1 on the favorite, minus 375, minus 350 for Gary, but I certainly would take nearly 3-1 on the underdog. If you combine them, it comes, it's about 3-1 on average. But I would take the plus 250, plus 280. I think Vicente Luque is very live in that fight. and I think he has a very good chance of winning. I think a very good chance of winning indeed. And I think that people are worried about him because of the brain swelling after the Jeff Neal fight. He even mentioned after the RDA fight that he was concerned going into that fight, but he did
Yeah.
take some good shots, and I think he's good to go. And I think that that the 32-year-old is still just near the end of his prime. The 26-year-old has not reached his prime yet. A lot of people are thinking Gary has all this on his mind. Probably not. All this might be on his mind, but I don't think it's going to affect his fighting
Nah, I
because
don't think so.
that's what he does for a living. But I would go because of the odds. I think there's value on Luque, but this one could go either way. Should be a great matchup. I think Luque is the better striker. And Luque's been getting better and better grappling with his good friend and longtime teammate Gilbert Burns.
Yeah.
But indeed, he isn't quite Gilbert Burns in the grappling. I think Gary may want to, if he can get on top as the longer fighter, this is where he'd like to be. So I think if Luque can stay off of his back
Yeah.
against Gary, because even in his guard, you're so much taller, you
Yeah.
can
So
smash
yeah.
someone. Even So I think that that Luque needs to stay off his back in his fight, and I think the Gary team very much would like to put Luque on his back.
Yeah, I pretty much echo everything you're saying there. I think as much as people don't like him, I do actually think Ian Gary is the real deal. Like I look at him, and granted, the fight against Magny, I do think someone of his level should be looking for the stoppage and actually stopping Magny. But at the same time, why put yourself in extra risk when you don't need to? I think us as fans sometimes need to take a step back and go, well, this is their livelihood. If Ian Gary goes out there and starts being reckless, trying to get the finish to try and make us happy and then loses, we're not the ones that have to, deal with the brain damage, deal with an injury potentially, deal with less pay than you would have got with the win and show money. So sometimes we just got to take a step back and let the fighters do what they do. I don't know where Luque. I don't think Luque is going to get him to the ground because Ian Gary does look quite difficult to take to the ground. Plus, dealing with his range, like Ian Gary's management of range is very, very good. I expect him to land leg kicks and then start throwing kicks up the middle and then really start letting his hands go. But I'm going for an Ian Gary stoppage in this one. And then I think he gets on the mic and I think he may look to go for Sean Brady, who called him out last week. So. And I think that could be a good fight because we also need to see his wrestling tested against a wrestler as well. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes. Next fight, speaking of a wrestler versus striker, Rachmanov versus the Wonder Boy Stephen Thompson. This almost came across like a punishment for Wonder Boy because he turned down a fight, and then the UFC giving Rachmanov, who's almost like their contract killer at the moment. But this is still a very interesting fight because we've never seen Rachmanov in there with as fluid a striker as Wonder Boy Thompson. However, we have unfortunately seen Wonder Boy in there with wrestlers who have got good ground games, and it doesn't usually end well for him. Is this last chance saloon for Wonder Boy to make a run at the title?
That's a good question. I'll give a Premier League reference. Is this matchup going to look a bit like West Ham against Liverpool in a football match? That's not usually a close matchup. Well, occasionally, right?
Yeah, occasionally, yeah.
Ask the question again. I had that silliness in my mind.
Do you think this is last chance saloon for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson if he wants to make a run at the title?
Indeed, yes, indeed. I think it is. This is a very important fight, and let's go take a look here at the old trusty MMA professor reference library here to make sure that we have all the information at our fingertips. So. And there we are, just as I thought. The last fight was that very good fight against Stephen Thompson. He did get beaten by Bilal, who did utilize a lot of wrestling. He got beaten by Gilbert Burns in the fight that I was at in person. And then he did beat Jeff Neal and Vicente Luque before that. He is 40 years old and not the best age to be in fighting, period. At 170, it'd be better if you were 40 at 185 or 205 or heavyweight. But he's still very quick. He's still quite unorthodox. Do you know he has one win by submission on his record? And
I didn't know that.
it was not in the UFC, of course. It goes back to... Well, we have to see this. Yes, he beat someone named Marcus Worrell in an organization called Fight Party Greenville Cage Fighting in 2010, and he won by a rear naked choke in the second. And Marcus Worrell's record is 6-3 and stopped fighting in 2015. But anyway, that's a distinction, though. But I don't know that he would brag about that, or indeed would he? He said, I not only fought nearly a UFC champion, but I was the only man to be submitted by Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I don't know. Would you brag about that? Perhaps not. But maybe that's his claim to fame. And we also gave him some more shine here on MMA from London to LA. So all respect to Mr. Worrell. I'm sure he could beat me by submission as well. Anyway, I think that this is a very important fight. On paper, it's not a good matchup, and we've lost Callum again. And we show my beautiful mock home right here. Beautiful. So this is a difficult matchup for Shavkat Rachmanov. Stephen Thompson is 40, and Shavkat, I think, is 28. Is he? Let's take a look. Shavkat, 29. 6'1" for Shavkat, and Wonder Boy is 6 feet tall. And there's Callum once again. Excellent. Good to see you, Callum. Good to see you. Good to see you, mate. So Shavkat is 29, 11 years younger. He's an inch taller. He is a very balanced fighter. Shavkat's record is amazing, 17-0 with 17 finishes,
Crazy.
as we know. Yeah, and Jeff Neal did take him in the third. Neal did quite well. And so if you look at MMA math, Wonder Boy beating Neal, but people would say, hey, maybe Wonder Boy does better than Neal. I don't think so. I think the matchup's big fight. And also, this was when he beat Neal, Wonder Boy was like 3-4 years younger. The only way I think that Thompson wins this fight is if Shavkat just decides, just for shits and giggles, as they say here in the States, that I'm going to stay on the feet the whole time and see if I can outstrike this karate man, Wonder Boy Thompson. And I tell you what, if he tries that and doesn't even try for any wrestling or grappling, and he loses, he's going to be the biggest fool, the biggest moron, idiot. He'll get the booby prize of the year to finish off the final UFC. It would be inexplicable. Literally, it would be as if he just decided he felt like throwing away his UFC career. So I think he's not going to do that. I think that normally he does like to strike. He's such a confident fighter that I think really he, like when he seemed perfectly comfortable striking with Jeff Neal and not getting smashed, but Neal was getting the better of him until like he finally said, all right, I'm enough of this foolishness, and then he got that standing rear naked choke. So he really, I hope he's practicing his wrestling. I hope he's right. He's aware that he's got to show an IQ in this fight, because if he does, this fight could possibly end early. And I think that if Shavkat goes in there in the first round or perhaps early in the second and takes down Wonder Boy and smashes him and or submits him, then it will really send a message. And this will be the biggest name certainly on Shavkat's resume, or CV, as you say there in Europe. And so, I think that's probably going to happen. So let's check the odds. My thought is 5-1 US odds. Let's take a look.
Do you reckon that wide?
Yep, and I am actually, it's just a bit lower. So you have Stephen Thompson at plus 400 to plus 10 to plus 410. Shavkat anywhere from minus 560 to minus 670. So it's about a bit over 4-1 odds. Yeah, so I was right near there. Yeah, I on paper this looks like as you guys would say, a bloody disaster.
Yeah, it looks like a real mismatch.
The American Wonder Boy, but I hope he does something. I like cheering for these guys in their 40s. I really, and Wonder Boy is not just going to plan to lay down and die. Wonder Boy is going to, he's working on his takedown defense.
Yeah.
Maybe some sort of it seems like Muay Thai. What'd be interesting, and people have told me this. In fact, I have a friend who's really a martial arts master. And guy's just got his black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's got numerous black belts in striking, worked in special ops in the military, and very high-profile bodyguard to stars and a lot of people. And I watched some fights with him occasionally, amazing guy. And I said, Wonder Boy, what could he do that would improve his game a lot, short of becoming an amazing wrestler, which is he's not going to be.
Yeah.
And he said, if he could get his Muay Thai skills really good to complement his karate style skills. If he could do that, then if someone were to close off the distance on him, he could switch gears into some elbows, some head plumps, some knees.
Yeah.
Yep. And he said if he could do that, he would be an even bigger force, because he's not done that yet. And
it's very true.
and at 40 years old, not that it's too late, but it's a bit late to probably.
It's a lot to ask.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, if he could have worked on that for the last couple months, brought in someone like Senchai or some of these, top Muay Thai guys. Yeah, right. And just like, wouldn't that be amazing? Would that not be amazing?
Yeah.
If, but I will say this, you come in and you try to head plumb Shavkat, he's going to be like, dude, you want to grapple with me?
Yeah.
You're gonna try to
It's a dangerous game with Shavkat in any area. Because he looks like he can take a real punch as well, not just dish it out.
Yeah, it's just everything is bad. The only thing that's good with Shavkat, if you're a really good striker, is if somehow you can keep Shavkat at bay. And Wonderboy is sometimes a bit lengthier than some of his opponents, and here he's not. He's got no advantage on paper against Shavkat except for experience and perhaps craftiness. What I think is interesting is predicting how long this fight will go. I think a lot of people are feeling first round stoppage Shavkat. And I think, in all honesty, if Wonderboy can get it past that, he'll impress quite a few people in a losing effort, which is what I would imagine happens.
I think he'll go 3 rounds, but I think Shavkat will get the finish in the 3rd round. I think he'll break Wonderboy down over the first 2 rounds, and then I think he'll get a submission finish in the 3rd. But be interesting to see what happens.
It would.
Sorry,
I was going to say, if Wonderboy could cut him, but at 29 years old, Shavkat doesn't have a ton of scar tissue.
Yeah.
He's probably got more than you and I, having been a pro fighter for many years, but he's still young enough that it's not prevalent. And I think a lot of guys have not got in any shots on him. So
not many,
it would have to be some brilliantly placed knee or elbow. Wouldn't that be interesting if that happens? If Wonderboy opens up some amazing cut with like a spinning elbow.
Or a spinning kick.
Or a spinning kick, and lands on Shavkat. Or like, how about a flying knee? How about he tries to time Shavkat on a shot and times it perfectly with a knee right up the middle?
Yeah.
How amazing would that be? Yeah, that would be so great for Wonderboy and so terrible for Shavkat. Nevertheless, take it away, Callum. Let's proceed.
So let's go on to the co-main event. Defending his title for the first time, Pantoja takes on Brandon Royval. If I'm not mistaken, have these two fought before? I think they have fought before, right?
Yes.
And Pantoja won the first time.
I believe so. Yes, indeed, he did. Yeah, I know he did. Yep.
I hate to say it, I think Brandon Moreno is the only person that beats Pantoja in this division. He just seems like he's almost goes into a zombie mode when he's fighting, where it's like, no matter what you hit me with, I'm still going to march forward and I'm still going to hunt you down. I think Moreno is the only one who can really deal with that style. I don't think Royval's got anything for him. I may be completely wrong. I can't think of an area where Royval goes, I can win in this area. Because Pantoja is very well rounded as well. We saw his ground game, saw his striking, saw his absorption of strikes. I think he takes this, and I think he takes this in inside the 5 rounds. I think a 3rd round stoppage.
Very well could be. We have a battle of great nicknames. The Raw Dog is the American, and the Cannibal is the Brazilian. They did fight August 21st of 2021 with Pantoja winning by rear naked choke over Brandon Royval. That was just 3 fights ago for Pantoja. And it was, how many fights ago was it for Royval? That was 4 fights ago for Royval. Royval's been on a 3-fight win streak since then. Let's match up the stats. 31 years old for Royval, 33 for Pantoja. At 125 pounds, though, it's somewhat significant. Pantoja's a bit of an older fighter. 31 fights for Pantoja against just 21 fights for Royval. Royval has 13 finishes, so he's at an 87% finish rate. Yep, with his 15 wins. And Pantoja has a 69% finish rate with 18 finishes out of 26 wins, on a 4-fight win streak now. Although, in my opinion, that fight with Moreno could have gone to Moreno. It was a split decision, but nevertheless,
very close fight.
Indeed, very close. Royval, Pantoja is the shorter fighter for sure, 5'5", with Brandon Royval being very tall for this weight. Well, you know what? They have him at 5'7". I think he's more like 5'8". I've seen him.
Yeah, I was going to say 5'8".
Yeah. Royval has beaten in his last few fights Rogerio Bontorin, a very tough fighter in a split decision. Matt Schnell, a tough fighter, and Matus Nicolau with a great stoppage in the first. Losses have been to only Pantoja, Brandon Moreno, Casey Kenny, who was on a big streak when he beat Royval, and then a couple guys earlier did lose to Ricky Palacios, Nick Urso. Man, this is a very, very good fight. Royval is out of Factory X, and I've interviewed Coach Mark Montoya a couple of times, and he's a really great guy, battling cancer himself and winning at this point, and hopefully he can win completely. God bless him and get rid of it. He's an amazing guy, a great coach, great person. I'm always wanting to back Factory X. And Brandon is a good guy. I've interviewed Brandon a couple times as well. Let's see the odds. I imagine they're going to make it perhaps 2-1.
Should be in Pantoja's favor, surely.
Yeah, not even quite 2-1. A little bit less than that. I'm gonna go with my heart here on Royval. I just think this is his moment. I think that his length, and I think even 2 years difference in age is going to come in, and the less wear and tear. Pantoja's got a lot of scar tissue on him. Royval is really good with the Muay Thai, and I think it's definitely a big ask for Royval. But I think he can do it. He's such a good guy. Not that Pantoja isn't, but I just would love to see the American pull this off. The Factory X. I'd love to see a celebration involving Mark Montoya and Factory X and his team. A bunch of really good guys, really good karma over there. And going with my heart, which you don't really want to do that much in predictions, but I think he can do it. But he's definitely going to be up against it. I think by the end of the first round, unless it's a really slow feeling out round, but at this weight class, these guys are not much of that. Yeah, they're throwing
0 to 100 straight away.
So I think that yeah, exactly. I think that it goes the distance, and I think that their last fight only went 2 rounds, and I think that Pantoja is going to be up against a better version of Brandon Royval. And I think Royval can do it. I think it's going to be really, really a great fight, though.
Completely agree. And on to the main event of the evening. Leon Rocky Edwards versus Colby Chaos Covington. Welterweight championship on the line. The fight finally happens. It's been a little while in the making as well. About, 18 months almost?
I believe so, yes. Quite a while.
Which is crazy. We definitely see more activity from these two men. But we finally have them stepping into the octagon to fight each other. Now, Edwards almost took the long route to get to a title shot, whereas for Covington, it seems as though he fights once, gets a title shot, loses, fights once again, gets another title shot, loses, fights once again, and then gets another title shot. Will it be third time lucky for Colby, or will Rocky continue his Balboa story?
I love that. I love that lead in Rocky
learning
Balboa.
From you, Colin. I'm learning from you.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot, mate. You're doing me proud. You're doing me proud. Here's a question for you on that first. If Leon Edwards walked into a fish and chips shop in England, is he popular enough that people would recognize him for sure? Is it 50-50, or would most people not recognize him?
Nah, he'd be recognized now. He after his first title fight where he got obviously the head kick knockout, he almost became a star overnight in the UK. And it's weird because I've watched his career, and I remember not the last time, but the time before he fought in the O2, he was on the undercard of Till and Masvidal, and he was fighting Gunnar Nelson, and he was booed into the octagon and then booed out of it. Then he had the
Wow.
altercation with Masvidal. Masvidal went on to be a massive star as partly as a result of that altercation. And Leon Edwards was kind of seen as just a bit of a joke. Even in England, I'd be quite confident in saying we didn't really hold him in high regard. Taryn Till starts losing. Then Paddy Pimlet bursts onto the scene, and everyone's like, "Oh, Paddy's the new guy." And Leon's still quietly going about his work. Gets the fight against Bilal Muhammad, ends with an eye poke. Everyone's still going like, "Well, what's going on with Leon?" Then I don't think his post match helped either, because he was like, "Well, I'm done with Bilal. I won a title fight next." And we were like, "Whoa, Leon, like you didn't win that fight though." Then he had the fights that he was meant to have with Hamzat, fell out 3 times because of COVID and various other things. He's meant to have the homecoming fight with Woodley a week before it got cancelled because of the pandemic starting. Then he gets dropped from the rankings in UFC. Then he gets reinstated. Then he gets a title. Then he gets Nate. Beats Nate. Almost loses that fight in the final round. Then he fights Kamaru. He's losing the fight on the scorecards. And then boom. Literally in that moment, landing the head kick. And then his post-fight, everything changed for him, because we didn't really see much of his personality or anything. We only we saw his personality when he won that fight, and just the raw emotion of the post-match interview, and then outside the cage where he's walking to his dressing room and he's on the phone to his mom and his family. It was surreal. And then that's what made him become a star. And then when he came back to England and defended against Usman, that's when he really crossed over and became a UK megastar. So I think virtually anywhere he goes, especially in Birmingham, it'll be very hard for him to navigate without getting recognized and stopped.
I can imagine. Could you imagine if someone saw him like in the next few days eating fish and chips, like just several days prior?
Yeah. But the thing is, if anyone can, it's probably him. Like he looks like he's just shredded all year round. So
that's true.
he doesn't get out of shape at all. He's always in great shape. So if anyone can, deviate from the diet a little bit and still make weight, it's probably Leon.
Right, like maybe he would have like one fish and 2-3 chips on his plate, right? And say, but yeah, absolutely. This is a great matchup. Very, very interesting. Leon just keeps on winning and winning and winning and winning, and has 100% earned his way. He had the no contest with Bilal, which he was winning that fight, and although could be a good future matchup, he probably would have won that fight. But really, look at this. The last loss he had was against Usman in 2015. So that makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then Gunnar Nelson 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So if you consider the no contest a non-loss, which it was a non-loss, then it would be a 12-fight win streak, or you could say 11-fight win streak with 1 no contest. And amazing. Now, Colby Covington, as you mentioned, not as good, having the 2 losses to Usman. He beat everyone else, though, but he beat a Robbie Lawler who was past his prime.
Same with Woodley.
He beat Rafael dos Anjos, who was pretty much more of a lightweight than a welterweight. Beat Woodley, who was past his prime, and then beat Masvidal, who also was toward the end of his career and was a bad matchup for Masvidal. So there's a lot of questions on the American Colby Covington in this fight. Colby is nearly the same age as Kamaru. Maybe a year and a half younger at 35 years old. Slightly shorter at 5'11". Kamaru being 6 feet tall. Leon Edwards is 6 feet tall, perhaps a bit. So it's weird. I think he's like 6'1" or 6'2". For some reason, Sherdog does him. So he's taller. He's 32 years old, so slightly younger. So this is a very interesting match. First, let me take a look at the odds here. This should be Leon, perhaps maybe 2 1/2 to 1 favorite. My thoughts. Let me see what it turns out to be. And it turns out to be, and why are they not showing? They always
I wonder if
screw this up.
Covington's the favorite going into it because of his wrestling.
I would think he would not be, but then he might be. But you know what? It's not going to show me. This stupid thing is all botched up here. I hate when that happens because for whatever reason, it's got, okay, let me see if I refresh this. Okay, so where is the damn fight? So let's see if we go. Tell me if you can see any odds in England because for whatever reason, it's seeming to be off the. Here it is. I got it.
You got it?
They do have Leon a slight favorite, about 1.4 to 1 favorite, not
Okay.
even 2 to 1. Yeah, makes sense. So my thought is this: is this going to look similar to the last two Usman fights? Usman and Covington are similar fighters. They kind of almost mirror each other. That's why their fights were both so competitive. Um, I think Usman might have been the more explosive athlete of the two. Excuse me, but I think also Usman's striking is improved, but was a bit more basic. I think Covington
Yeah.
was a bit better striker. Um,
Covington's more fluid, but Usman
yeah,
has way more punching power and striking power than
right,
Colby. Colby
right.
just blazes you with volume, doesn't he? Effectively.
Yeah, he does. And I think this is going to come down to the takedown defense because Leon is the better striker than Colby, even though Colby is a better striker than Kamaru, but doesn't have the power. Leon is such a balanced fighter. Like that's one of the
Yeah.
things I've been high on Leon for 3-4 years now because he's just once his wrestling got put in place, he just was such a balanced fighter. Like his jiu-jitsu is good, his wrestling is good, his striking is good. Not just good, all of them are very good. Perhaps his jiu-jitsu might be the weakest, and he hardly ever uses it, so we don't know. But
Yeah.
I would think it's pretty good. Um, here's what I'll say. I think people at this point know that Covington, the bad guy and the nasty guy is for show. It's kind of been pointed out. Even Joe
Yeah.
Rogan pointed it out. Um, Everyone that meets him says he's quite polite and quite respectful. But it's a gimmick, as they say.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's a bad guy. Not only that, but I think a lot of people hated him for a while for supporting Donald Trump, and I
Mm.
think as time has gone by, that's aged better. I know some people that are extremely on the
Yeah.
left side would not agree, but I think right now with our country in dire straits, I think a lot of people were wishing Trump was leading us, and I don't blame them. I would be among them. So
Yeah.
I think that that's aged well. Some people at first were thinking he was trying to go for someone who was, some sort of a terrible person or racist, this and that.
Yeah.
None of that was proven. So I think, in all honesty, all he's done is to be brash and tell people that they're garbage, they suck, and this and that. And so he's not really saying, he's not full of controversy, as you guys say in English, as much as he is just a little bit of a brash showboat. Sorry for losing Callum and for my sinuses starting to hurt me here. Um, anyway, sorry for I don't know what the hell I'm apologizing. It's a weird weekend for me. There's Callum. Callum is right back. So, in all honesty, I think if Colby were to win, he would be genuinely happy. You know what? Also, perhaps if he win, maybe he would put the gimmick aside. It'd be interesting. I don't think we've ever seen that in MMA. I know Chael Sonnen never put it aside, but Chael Sonnen never won a title. Wouldn't
Yeah.
that be the interesting time to do it and maybe set a precedence at the end of the year if he won? And I know this wouldn't be great for the British, and I'm not,
Yeah.
but if Colby
Leon's
won,
Jamaican as well, so this is
that's
even
true. You
worse
got
for me.
both.
Yeah.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah. Like.
But if Colby won and renounced the gimmick and said, I had to make money. I was carrying placards years ago saying we'll fight for money, which he was doing.
Yeah.
And he's just and if he were to say, I never meant to insult anyone. It was all a put on. I'm the champion now. Now I've got some financial security, so I'm going to renounce all this bullshit and so on. It'd be interesting. It would be, and then a whole bunch of people would still hate him because they'd say you're a lying ass, and now you've admitted you are the. But nevertheless, I think Colby is a very tough guy. He's got very, very good cardio. And I think he's had less wars than Usman, and Usman still looks good. Usman looked great at 185. I thought he well, no, he didn't beat
I
Hamza.
thought
Well,
he won the fight.
Yeah, that's true. It was quite close. I do remember. He was out wrestled, but I think he was
Yeah,
in that fight. Yeah. Um, I'm going to go Leon Edwards. I think Leon is just too balanced. He's too good a fighter at this point, and I think 3 years younger is an advantage. But I think Colby's going to make this a fight, and I think that Colby's going to be looking for those kicks as well. And a lot of times, if you throw a high kick against a better wrestler, you're asking to be taken down. And I
yeah.
think Colby's going to be looking for that. Uh, I don't know what else Colby can come up with. I don't think he can improve his striking skills dramatically. Maybe he can add some things. Maybe he can throw some kicks because I don't think Leon's going to be looking to take him. Although, you know what? I say that, and
You
then
say
Leon
that,
takes
and
down. Leon proves that he takes down Division 1 wrestlers. You
yeah,
know, so that's what's going to be interesting. What would be interesting is if Colby threw a kick or something and Leon took him down, and then what would happen there? Would Colby be able to get up easily? And if not, then Colby's in trouble. I think Leon Edwards wins this fight, but I think it's going to be a competitive matchup. I think Leon I think Leon can win, but I think it would either be a late round stoppage or possibly the distance. And forgive me, I forgot if you threw out your prediction yet. I don't think you did.
I
I think we're
haven't. Yeah.
saving the best for that. Let's hear it. I know with understanding that you're a big fan of Leon, but I
Yeah.
know you can be objective, of course, anyway. So what do you think? How's this one play out in your
So
opinion?
I think the key for me here is, can Leon take the center of the octagon? And the reason I say that is because against Usman, he kind of was, especially in the second fight, he was very good with his lateral movement and picking Usman off from range. And I think the difference between Usman and Colby, even though I agree they're very similar, Usman for me is a bit more cerebral, whereas Colby lives up to his name. He is very chaotic in there. You kind of don't know what he's going to throw next, whether it's a kick or a punch or go for a takedown. He's relentless, but he's very relentless when he's backing guys up towards the cage. He uses the cage a lot for leverage to get takedowns, and then will try and drag them back into the center, or he won't even necessarily stay in a guard or anything. He'll just try and just pepper the guy. He'll even let them up sometimes just to take them back down. I think if Leon can take the center of the octagon and have Colby backing up, then I think that negates a lot of what Colby can do, because then Colby's going to have his back against the fence. He's going to be pushing off from the fence. Getting takedowns from that position is going to be more difficult. And it's just, if you don't disguise your takedowns versus Leon, you're just not going to get them. He's very good in his takedown defense. I also think Leon's a very crisp striker. And look, Colby's proven he can take a punch. We've seen it against Usman. The difference between Leon and Usman, Leon just has that pop on his punches because he's more of a striker than Usman. Usman, for me, just looks like someone who's naturally strong. So when he hits you, it's gonna hurt, it's gonna be thudding. But Leon's a striker who it's gonna hit you and it's also gonna startle you as well. So with that being said, I think Colby makes it a hell of a tough fight. I think Leon takes it over 5 rounds, though. I'd probably go like a 4 rounds to 1 decision, but I expect it to still be every round. I expect to be very competitive, but I think Leon gets the job done.
Makes sense. I could definitely see that. Do you think that if Shavkat has a great performance in his fight over Wonderboy, that he calls out Leon? I would think possibly so, and that probably would be the next fight.
So I think Bilal Muhammad apparently
That's
today's
right.
been revealed. He's the backup now, isn't he?
I
So
think so.
I think he'll get the next fight. Dare I say, if Bilal gets the next fight and Shavkat wins, I think Shavkat versus Gary will potentially happen if they both win. But I'll be honest, if Gary goes out there and has a sensational knockout and then calls out Leon because of the little bit of history they have, Gary could jump the queue.
Yeah. Yeah.
He could jump the queue. But Gary's also come out a few times and said he's not going to rush for a title shot. So he may call out Shavkat or even Sean Brady. But if Shavkat gets a big win, then I think he becomes the guy who waits for the winner of Bilal and whoever is the title holder at the time.
Absolutely. Man, the 170 weight class in the
Oh, it's
UFC is
booming.
really booming,
Oh,
isn't
it's
it? And
booming. I just wish Hamzat was able to get his diet under control to be in the mix.
yes. Oh man, that would be amazing. That would
And
be
we still
amazing.
forget Usman's still technically a 70-pounder as well. He just fought once at 85.
Right?
So
Yeah.
even though I mean a separate video made, but I'd love to see Usman versus Whitaker at 85 potentially. Like for me, that would be a hell of a fight. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So many great fights abound, and in
yeah,
the new year, hopefully we'll get quite a few. Man, well, I
Indeed.
tell you, I think it's going to be an exciting card, and was planning on being there, but plans have changed, unfortunately. And but I
Yeah,
will be watching it. Certainly, the last event of the year, and
definitely.
yeah, Callum. So I tell you, it's great chatting with you. We're going to be back. We'll
No,
be
pleasure's all
strong.
mine.
Yeah, thank you, mate. It's always great working with you, Callum Sanderson. Like I say, the man who has the wrestling of Kale Sanderson, the man who has the brains of the greatest analyst in sports, all combat sports, the man who has the charisma, charm, and the great looks of your favorite movie star, all thrown into my friend from England, the amazing Callum Sanderson. You are
Bless
the
you, man.
best, one of my favorite people to work with in
Nah,
my history.
likewise. Likewise. I appreciate that, man. Humbling coming from you as well, man. Thank you.
Thank you. You're very welcome. So I'll let you take it away, Callum, for the
Yes,
to wrap
people.
it up.
So if you haven't already, do smash that like button, subscribe to Hannibal TV as well. We'll be back next week recapping UFC 296. May even look back on the year as well with a few fun things to discuss. But it's always been a pleasure. My name is Callum Sanderson with the genius that is Colin Crandall. Until we see you next time, take care, everyone.
Peace.